Hello, everyone, and welcome to our presentation around traffic management plans and your community events. Here with me today are some of my colleagues at the City of New Westminster. So Melissa Flintoff and Jen Box-Foldy are two of the event coordinators that you might work with when you're working on planning your community event. And we also have Michael Nguyen, who is here from our transportation team, and he's actually going to be our primary presenter. So we're happy to provide this information and hope that it helps your community event. You can also always email us at specialevents@newscity.ca if you'd like further clarification or if you have a follow-up question after watching this presentation.
Great. Thank you, Jen, for the introduction. Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Nguyen. I'm the engineering technologist with the City of New Westminster, and my role is supporting our wonderful folks at the special events team. And we review the traffic management plans and develop some as well. And we guide Jen and her team through successful special events for all things to keep the public safe. So with that, I'm going to just jump into a short presentation I have today for you. It's an it's an introduction to traffic management for special events. So here we go. And I'm just gonna share my screen here. Okay. Oops. Start that again. Are you able to see the PowerPoint team?
Yeah, we can see your PowerPoint. It's not in presenter mode if that matters to you, but we can see it.
Okay. How do I get the presenter here? Hmm. Okay, I'm just gonna go through the slide then one by one.
Yeah, that's
Um,
just fine.
Perfect. Okay, so as I mentioned, this is a brief introduction to traffic management for special events. The focus today is just to really have a high-level discussion about it. So we're not going to get into all the real details and nitty-gritty of traffic management plans and those sorts of things, but just more of an exposure to um, to these principles. So with that, today we're going to talk about a bit of an introduction. We're going to talk about traffic management plan and what that is. We're going to go through some common safety issues. Um, Afterwards, we'll discuss what everyone can do as part of a to make a special event a success, and then any questions that anyone may have at the end of this brief introduction. So as I mentioned, this is the start of for special events. This is an introduction. What is traffic management? Well, it simply refers to the organization, guidance, and control of traffic, including pedestrians, bicyclists, and vehicles, to ensure a safe, orderly, and efficient movement. It encompasses a wide range of measures and strategies, from basic signage to sophisticated digital systems. Um, Key references in this presentation that I refer to, and that would be helpful to know, are based on the BC Traffic Management Manual for Work in BC, the BC Motor Vehicle Act, and then City of New Westminster's Street and Traffic Bylaws, number 7664, edition 2015. Okay, and I promise that'll be the driest portion of this presentation. um, Going further, traffic management plan is a detailed, specific document that details the strategies used for protecting event guests while safely and efficiently moving road users through or around the closure area. So TMPs are event specific and they're tailored to the unique requirements of each situation, and they often include traffic control, incident management, and implementation. However, again, for today, this discussion, I'm going to focus on the traffic control, and I'm going to have basically two goals for today's presentation. I'd like to introduce examples of typical plans that you may encounter for events in New Westminster, and I'm going to guide you on how to interpret them. And essentially, the three plans are a traffic control plan, an advanced sign plan, and a parking restriction plan. So the traffic control plan may look something like this. Um, um, To the right, there's typically a legend, and the legend is your friend. It will guide you on the symbology, the types of barricades, for example, the types of vehicles that may be deployed. I'm not sure if you can see it here. It might be kind of hard to see, but there's police vehicles, city trucks, red for barricades. Um, it symbolizes also the number of barricades to be deployed at a certain area, um, whether it's a police member stationing or a traffic control person stationing the closure. And then under that, there's typically some notes that we'll include that are implementation type notes. So they give instructions on who does what. For example, engineering operations to drop off barricades, a traffic control person to, install the signage before and after the event. So it's quite specific to a task at hand there, and that's typically the intent of a note. So as you can see here, we have examples of where a barricade may be deployed. Um, we have the number of barricades deployed at a certain area, and we have locations where you can find police or traffic control personnel deployed. And there may be also specific instructions like a truck barricade to be placed here by 10 a.m., um, shown with the green symbol there. So it should be very straightforward. A traffic management plan, again, the intent is for the safe movement of people and goods. So it should indicate where a road closure is, um, where traffic control personnel or police may be found, and it serves as a reference for all parties there, whether it's police, event organizers, the public. So the intent is for it to be easily readable by anyone if you just follow the legend. Okay, moving on. The next example that you might see is a advanced sign plan. And you'll typically be able to tell an advanced sign plan by seeing some orange signs, which is orange static signs are what we typically place around the city in advance of road closures for a special event. And they're marked by uh, basically a character, a letter, to symbolize the relationship between the sign. There's a specific sign, the size and the quantity, and then the map will indicate where it is placed in the city there. It also shows the directional face. So I'm not sure if you can see it here, but I'll get in a little bit of zoom so you can see that the face of the sign the flat side will face the direction of traffic. So this is facing eastbound, this is facing southbound, and so on. Um, yeah, so with advanced signs, again, with notes, they indicate implementation. So the responsibility for our sign shop to install um, signs, certain lettered signs, and then um, third-party signs to be installed by the traffic control company here, indicated by, again, A1 and the letters, so forth. So again, the intent is for it to be easy to understand and implemented by the appropriate persons. And then the last sign that you may see for special events is typically a parking restriction sign. Parking restrictions are just that. They help guide our sign crews to install the proper signage. They indicate the period uh, that the signs would be in effect for, and yeah, and then these signs are typically placed 24 to 48 hours in advance of an event to allow residents sufficient time to move their vehicles prior to the event. Um, they may also include special conditions such as a special shuttle or accessibility pickup drop-off area, which we've shown here. It's indicated in the pink, shuttle and accessibility. It's shown on the map here. and then a typical sign is shown here for reference. Um, yeah, so with these parking restriction signs and the traffic control signs and the advanced signs, they constitute essentially the core of what a typical traffic management plan for a special event would look like here in the city of New Westminster. Um, there may be other drawings that also help communicate to the public. These signs are not shown here, but sometimes they can accompany these three core signs. Um, I'm just going to move on to from traffic control plans um, to some common safety issues that you may encounter. So now that you've seen what some of our traffic control plans look like, I'd like to show some typical examples of some situations that we run into when setting up traffic control. And some of these situations are the reasons why we have traffic control plans is because without them, um, they can lead to a lot of dangerous safety issues, which we want to avoid, and that's why the work is put into a traffic management plan is to avoid these situations and so that the general public, motorist vehicles can all get to where they need to go safely and also still have an event safely. So with that in mind, I'm just going to show some examples and discuss uh, the potential issue here. The first one here, if you can see, is a vehicle parked in a no parking area. There's no parking signs over here. It's blocking a crosswalk. So pedestrians would have to go around this vehicle. So fairly fairly obvious there. Um, the second example here is a vehicle basically stopping and parking on one of our sidewalks, or uh, in this case here, the Agnes Greenway, which is a multi-use path. Um, so we do not permit any vehicles to park on city assets like sidewalks and boulevards. They cause damage to the city's infrastructure, so we would never, yeah, typically allow this. Um, this is a good example here, these two pictures of sightline issues. So the first picture here is a vehicle that's parked a little too close to the intersection. So when a vehicle is coming out of the intersection, it's going to have a hard time seeing around this vehicle. So we want to avoid something like this, where a vehicle parks fairly close to the intersection. Um, Down below, fairly obviously again, this truck is parked right up to the stop sign and stop bars. So you could imagine if a pedestrian was walking across here, they would be completely blocked by this vehicle. So if a car was coming to the stop sign, a driver may not have um, the ability to see a pedestrian approaching due to this parked vehicle. So we always want to ensure vehicles are staying away from the intersection. These two examples are why it's important to have proper signage and and yeah, really, it's about proper signage and how they're placed, because signs are there to direct the public, and if they're not um, the proper signs, then obviously a lot of problems negative things can happen if the signs are incorrect, or they tell the public to do something that they shouldn't be doing. So it's really important to not only have the right type of sign, but also to make sure that the sign is doing what it needs to do. So in this first example, it's the wrong sign. It's telling pedestrians to cross in the wrong place. Um, this contractor basically didn't have the sign that went the other way, so they just thought, okay, this is good enough, and they put the sign here because that's what they had. And then below here, a contractor just decided to close the sidewalk and put up one of their own signs. So yeah, this was not approved by the city. We would never approve sort of a sign that's not compliant with the BC Traffic Management Manual for construction signs. Um, and yeah, we would not approve a closure of the sidewalk like this. So this contractor just went ahead and decided to close the sidewalk, and it gave pedestrians nowhere to go. So we want to avoid this kind of scenario here. Um, this example here, I guess it's self-explanatory. The first is the lift here. You can see is lots of things wrong with the situation. The the lift is not only blocking the vehicle travel lane, but it's also blocking the crosswalks. And if yeah, pedestrians would have to walk around this. It's causing all kinds of sightline issues. So this one was very concerning, um, considering the location and the amount of traffic and pedestrians through here. Um, the example below, for obvious reasons, what I mentioned earlier there, parking on the curb and halfway on the street. So when a vehicle drives over a curb, it could potentially damage uh, the curb and sidewalk. Um, so this van shouldn't be doing that. It's also parked extremely close to a crosswalk, so it could be potentially causing sightline issues for anyone crossing. They may not be seen by a vehicle until very late. Um, and not just that, this van is also the way it's parked, it's on the sidewalk and it's also on the street. And a vehicle would have to go around this and cross over the center line. So it's causing a dangerous situation with vehicles having to go around it and potentially going into oncoming vehicles. So yes, definitely a situation we want to avoid. So those are just some examples of typical, safety issues that if you spot, um, what can you do about it? Well, um, just to remember to avoid erecting any signage or structures that may block sightlines. It's really important that pedestrians are seen for special events. Reminds your staff and guests to please follow event signage. Where they park their vehicles is really important. Periodically check that signs and devices are in place. Sometimes signs get blown over or a device or cone or barricade gets knocked over. Just make sure that they're always uh, kept up and maintained. And please report any concerns to city staff as soon as you see it. Um, this picture up here is a good example too of a vehicle. Um, Not only blocking the crosswalk so pedestrians can go through the intersection, but they also um, are contravening the BC Motor Vehicle Act. They're well within an intersection here. They've crossed the stop bar and stop line. So all kinds of safety issues with this issue here. So just remember, vehicles must be 6 meters away from the approach of a stop sign or the stop line of an intersection. Um, Vehicles should be 5 meters away from either side of a hydrant and 6 meters away from a crosswalk. And if we can kind of everyone can do their part and just remember some of these really simple rules, I guess, that will go a long way with keeping everybody safe. And yeah, that concludes my short introduction here to some traffic management plan. I know I went through some things fairly quickly, but if you had any questions or like to elaborate, just please feel free to let me know. Any questions?
Thanks, Michael. I'll probably mention here, for those that might be viewing this recording later, is that when the events office asks an event organizer to like prepare a site map, part of why we're asking for that site map is so that you and your team are able to actually create the traffic management plan. So that's why we ask for things like what time will the road need to be closed, not necessarily what time your event is, but what time will the road need to be closed? What time will the road be able to be reopened? So if it's a road closure. And I think, we try to make it, you don't have to be a professional engineer to host an event in the city, and that's why the city has folks in our transportation department to do this work. But that's why we ask for such specifics, and sometimes we come back repeatedly and ask, can you clarify this? Can you clarify this? How many feet do you need? How many parking spaces will you be taking because of all these sort of, signs and barricades that might be required? So, I really appreciate you sort of showing like those are the sort of the output, the end drawing, the thing that all the professionals need in order to keep an event safe. But that's why we're asking for really specific site maps. Even if it's not a road closure, there's still pedestrian access. So a good example is at Tipperary Park. It is a parking lot, so that's technically a road. And so it's important, even if you're doing an event in what you think is a parking lot and it should be really easy, there still is a impact to traffic management that has to be managed. So just wanted to maybe mention that for this purposes of this recording.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jen. And another thing too is just like you mentioned, be mindful when you're setting up a site map that it's somewhat realistic in terms of scale. So if you're putting, 10-foot canopies along a face, just make sure that you're all maintaining the appropriate width for emergency vehicle access of 3 meters, and that you kind of, you've developed as a realistic site map, right? That can be implemented. Yeah,
Yeah,
that really helps us.
I'd also probably mention, in light of some of the tragedies that have occurred in Vancouver at the Lapu Lapu Day Festival, we've had lots of questions regarding hard barricades and using city vehicles as hard barricades. And so, from an events perspective, I'll mention that those generally come at a cost because staff do have to drive it there and park it in place, and it does need to be there. And that means it's out of service for its other purpose. So, there's definitely a cost associated with those. Do you have an idea? I mean, I know the police kind of give us direction in terms of level of risk and whether or not we need a hard barricade, but do you have any sort of rules in the BC traffic management manual around what kinds of barricades are used?
No, unfortunately, as far as I know, there isn't specific guidelines yet. We're still waiting to um, follow, I guess, see what other municipalities and the province is going to establish. I think it's in the works, and once that's officially communicated, we'll likely align with those principles. But
That's great.
for now, yeah, we're deferring to each situation and what our folks at New West Police guide us on.
Yeah, I think that's, these are all very specific to an event and very specific situations. They do have to be sort of crafted individually based on levels of risk and based on, the amount of time and even the time of year that something might be taking place. I know that, a tiny little block party, down the road is going to be very different than something that closes Royal Avenue for 5 hours. So definitely has implications. I have one other question. What about if buses have to be rerouted? What do event organizers need to know about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Definitely TransLink needs to be notified, and what we usually do is we give them a long lead time to ensure that they plan closures accordingly and are able to advise riders and so forth. So if it's for a new event, I would say, give us, the usual approximately 8 weeks to work with Coast Mountain Special Operations, Special Events team. Um, we first determine what the road closures are, and then consequently, what are the impacts to transit, and then we leave it to transit to make that decision on
Yeah.
whether they close it or reroute buses, and we'll defer that information to them. But we must provide them a TMP ahead of time for them to
Mhm.
make that decision, and that takes time to develop, and so that's why we ask for the lead time that we do.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and there's a lot of different groups that have to review those. So our engineering ops team, the events team, even our communications team sometimes weighs in because they have to think about whether or not they need to communicate something. So there's a lot of staff review that goes into every traffic management plan, and so it is a really complex thing. And I think a lot of stuff of it happens behind the scenes, so people don't necessarily know. So right now, for any large event, we're looking for at least 60 days, but honestly, give us 6 months. If you know your event's happening, please come to us as early as possible, because there are a lot of events that happen, especially in between May and probably the end of July. There's a lot of stuff happening in the city of New Westminster. So definitely, the more lead time we can get, the safer an event can be because there's significantly more time for staff to prepare all the right documentation and plans and inform all the different parties that might need to be involved.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll ask is around what if there's other projects that are happening, like construction projects?
You,
Do we
you
kind
read
of
my
talk
mind.
about those? Yeah,
You
great.
you just read my mind. I was just gonna elaborate on what you just said about it's summer, and summer is typically when construction is at its highest. And so with special events and construction being, sort of at the peak here, there is a fair bit of coordination and and discussions that need to take place. So the more information we have, the sooner we have. It just makes everyone's life a lot easier when we can establish and get those conversations going and get the coordination going. Because once summer starts and construction starts, it's a matter of prioritizing, and we want to make sure these special events are able to run without um, construction impacts. And a lot of times they run through potentially construction sites, and these construction sites have to do a fair bit before they can vacate for a special event. So again, just back to what you said earlier, just the more time we have to coordinate these, there's a lot of work that goes not just in the traffic management, but the coordination. Um, yeah, it just ensures a more successful event with the more lead time we have.
Awesome.
Great question.
Yeah. Melissa or Jen, did you have any questions before we sign off and let Michael get back to planning traffic?
I just had a question. Would you like event organizers to reach out to us or to you if they have questions about the TMP? If you could just clarify that, please.
Yeah, I think if we can go through, if event organizers see an issue, if they can go through the team, one of yourself or Jen or Jen, um, and then it gets that way the conversation goes through both of our groups, and then if there's issues, we can always have a debrief, and I'll be aligned on the information and the feedback there.
That's great.
Thank you.
And I do have one last question that was prompted from that. The comment or question I guess that I have is like we do review these afterwards and we do check in to see if they were successful and we do make adjustments for the following year and make notes. I know just recently we had a big event and we got together and you made some notes on the TMP so that next year when it's time to prepare it, we remember, oh, we need to adjust this or change a barricade here or add some additional signage. So these are sort of I'd say living documents in that, from year to year to year, we do make changes and refinements and respond to what's happening in the community. So, when we get feedback, especially from the event organizers afterwards, it's really valuable for us to get that. So we'll always try and do a debrief too when there was a TMP involved.
Yeah.
I
And
just,
like you said, the city is a dynamic place, and events may change from year to year slightly, not just because of the event footprint, but because of other factors potentially like construction or road impacts. But
yeah.
yeah, we always try to stay on top of that.
I just have one last question. As a brand new like event organizer and I've never closed down a road before, um, and as a TMP has many information regarding like number of barricades and police and lots of aspects that may be brand new to these event organizers. What is the key information that you need from them to be able to start the traffic management plan for you? Like, do they need to know how many police officers are there barricades? So what's the level of information for like a base level?
If I understand the question is to perform a road closure, what information do I need? Um, I guess the first thing I would need is to understand the duration of the road closure, obviously where it is. It can really impact. Certain roads are much more difficult to close than others. So local streets obviously are quite straightforward, but collector or arterial roads are quite challenging. Not impossible, but quite challenging and require significantly more coordination, lead time. Consultation with stakeholders, whether it be trucking association, TransLink, um, rail companies. So, yeah, I guess I'll take the easy answer. It kind of depends, but But we'd have to look at all the scenarios, where it is, the type of duration, um, whether the day it falls on, um, potentially even, like things like how big this event will be,
Mhm.
because it would kind of trigger potentially a safety study or guidance from the police. Um, yeah, uh, also the road geometric, how big and wide the road is, and how whether an emergency vehicle can go in there. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. I wish I can give you a straightforward answer, but I think what really helps is just giving us a projected site map on the onset, and giving us some time to be able to review it and make our determination.
Yeah, and it is a bit of a conversation, I'd say. Like, we're going to go back and forth. We probably will ask follow-up questions. We probably will need more information. It's not just like, here's a site map done. Sometimes that would be nice if they were all like that. But it is definitely a conversation, and we'll likely have to ask follow-up information based on some of the specifics. And so I think event organizers need to be prepared to answer those questions in a pretty timely way so that we can continue with the review and keep going. So it is a conversation. It's not just a form and you're done, but it is probably one of the most important parts, I think, of an event is just ensuring safety for all users, whether that's the event attendees or whether that's the folks who have to detour around, or pedestrians or cyclists that might be impacted. And then I also making sure that accessibility is still maintained for anyone that uses a mobility device. So, but yeah, it's a conversation, and I think Michael's right. The answer is it depends. Okay, if there's no more questions, I'll end our recording here, and we can share the presentation slides. And once again, if you do have questions, you can float them through special events at newscity.ca. We're happy to connect you with Michael if you've got some questions about your event or about an idea you have for an event. And we're happy to work with you and make sure that the event is well managed and nice and safe.
Great. Thanks, Jen, for setting this up. Hope
Thanks.
everyone has a great day. Thank you.
Thanks.